David Bishop. Dave returns for this extra special debrief on the latest research report. David, what is the name of the latest report that is now available to retailers everywhere? Well, in grocery retail.
Yeah. Well, Mark, to answer that, it is Profiling the Online Shopper E-Grocery Purchase Patterns in the U.S.
And can you tell me, is this something that was newly generated, or is this, where did you get the data from? I'm curious.
Well, this comes from a compilation of 2 years worth of monthly survey waves. So we're looking at calendar year 2022 versus calendar year 2021. Each of those years respectively had somewhere in the order of 21,000 surveys completed, over the 12-month period. And as you know, Mark, in our monthly report that we publish, we don't go to this level of detail in there simply because it's probably not as prudent to do so with that smaller sample. But what we wanted to do was take advantage of this large data set, dig in a little deeper, do some additional crosstabs and segmentations of it to just get a better sense for, who's shopping our store if we're a supermarket or a grocer, and how does that compare against some of our key rivals in other formats, whether that's hard discounters like Aldi or the mass like Walmart and Target.
So let me ask you then, what's the top line key insight that you uncovered?
Well, I think the headline is, know who your core customers are and know the value that each represents to you, because what we found here is that that would point you in directions in terms of, how do we compete against the market leading EDLP player, that would be Walmart. And if we're going to lose customers, which ones would we rather not lose? Right? I mean, not all customers are equal. So knowing who's more valuable is important in the sense that would help you understand those are the customers you need to more carefully protect and nurture, so that you're not giving them the reasons to defect to someone else simply because you're not satisfying their needs.
Yeah, and I think that's incredibly important. I think certainly when we talk to grocery retailers, we really stress the point of knowing who your customers are, know how they're buying with you, what their preferred receiving method is, know what's in their basket. So there's a lot of foundational work that's required, and I think the report that you've produced, and Mercatus is happy to sponsor, really provides that extra lens that I think a lot of grocery retailers should be looking at. There may be some information that is intuitive and say, that sort of makes sense. And then there's some insights that I think will be a little surprising. Is there an insight that is surprising, that you think would be surprising to a grocery executive?
Yeah, I think we've seen in the press mentions, and they're more anecdotal because there's not any hard numbers associated with it, is that Walmart's attracting more upper income, right? That's really concerning because, they're moving up market, and that's the natural progression that...
I think the Wall Street Journal just published a story a couple of weeks back saying that exactly the same thing.
Right, and it's more anecdotal as opposed to empirical data because we don't see the data points. So one of the things we noticed, if we looked at the households by income segmentation and looked at those that earn $200,000 or more. Now, keep in mind, in the U.S., that income group represents a little over 10% of all U.S. households. Okay, so we're not talking a huge chunk, but not surprisingly, that group earning $200,000 or more a year is 3 times more likely to shop with supermarkets versus Walmart. We know from other research there are a variety of reasons for that. One is they place a higher value on the assortment or the quality of the products that they're getting. But what's surprising in that is that if we looked at calendar year 2022 versus the prior 2021, supermarkets' share in that group in terms of prevalence rate dropped about 120 basis points. while at the same time, Walmart's share of that income group grew by 210 basis points. So that's surprising because this group is not the price sensitive or as price sensitive as the more cost conscious, lower income group. So I think
Right.
that's surprising, and we'll put it in our perspective. It's surprising when you look at the customer mix in supermarkets. Around 15% of their customer mix is comprised of those households. Now, again, keep in mind that about 10% of all US households are in this income group. So they clearly over index when you look at supermarkets. You look at Walmart, it's under 7%, right? Now, if we pulled it back and looked at the cumulative share, including even households over 100,000, you have over 40% of the customer mix for supermarkets being constituted of households earning 100,000 or more, whereas at Walmart, it's under 30%, right? So you say, okay, I understand intuitively why a upper income or a more affluent household may be attracted to shop with supermarkets. The challenge is if you're losing that customer, how are you going to make that up? Keep in mind that wealthy customer, that most affluent customer in the 200,000 plus, spends 80% more a month in aggregate with a supermarket as opposed to the households who are in the under 50,000. So you lose one of those, you almost have to find two of the lower income to replace it, right? So that's a
And
big one.
as we know, I mean, acquiring new customers is more expensive than keeping the ones that you have.
Well, yeah, and I think here's a simple reality check for folks. You don't simply attract new customers.
Mm-hmm.
You really are positioned to receive new customers. And I say that because as a customer myself, I'm not actively out there searching for new places to shop until I become dissatisfied or displeased, right? So if you're a grocer out there who's really
or
catering
or
to,
or you're spending a lot in terms of media to get that shopper to try your offering, but again, they may just be cherry picking based
well,
on the
yeah,
discount that you
yeah.
provide.
So, and I've shared with you some of the mailers that we get and offers we
Yep.
get. And sure, if we wanted to cherry pick, yeah, that could hook us for an order or two. And yes, it is true that if we have an incredibly delightful experience and it delivers against our expectations, we may stick with them. But the reality is, you can put out all those marketing promotions and those deals, they're not going to attract the core engaged customer as much as you would think today because
Yeah.
our routines are more established, more entrenched, which means we're not actively searching for alternatives.
Well, what's interesting, and just going back to what you said about Walmart. So we know Walmart is making investments in their brick and mortar. We know, well, especially you're looking at the grocery and produce areas. They're making investments to make the display and the product that they're showcasing more in line with what you would expect at your local supermarket, your regional. Add on top of that, they have an experience in terms of either delivery or receiving by pickup that is on par or exceeds what you would get with your traditional grocer. And what does that all add up to?
Less reasons why you want to spend more at your local grocer. And I think it's important to note that, when we look at online, again, not the in-store price, but the
Yeah.
online pricing, we know that when we look at regional grocers, based on some very recent work we've done in some markets, those regional grocers are anywhere from 13 to 20+% higher than Walmart on a basket of 40 commonly purchased items.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a large spread. Now some of them maintain that same spread in store, some are narrower. But the question is, what is the value that your customer is getting if they're not getting it in the form of lower prices? And at the same time, not everyone is interested uh, in shopping with Walmart. So what we also need to be mindful of, let's not give them reasons to become interested. And some of that is long wait times if you're dealing with pickup, or poor communications when it comes to delivery, or kind of rampant out of stocks on everyday essentials that really just you know uh, aren't excusable, especially if others
Yeah.
are doing that. And then obviously providing a more pleasant experience through more personalized, shopping experience, whether it's through recommendations or list building and things of that sort.
So, David, there was one number that jumped out, and it was year over year. Walmart has gained what percentage of e-grocery shoppers compared to supermarkets?
Yeah, Walmart's reach into
Yeah.
online shoppers, so we would consider that online household penetration, rose nearly 2 points. At the same time, grocery or supermarkets dropped by nearly 2 points.
Hmm.
So, that's a 4 point closure on the gap that now puts Walmart maybe less than 2 percentage points behind the entire grocery channel in terms of online penetration of for online shopping. So I think that's kind of a stark reminder of just how quickly things can change. Now, a lot of that may be coming from the lower end. I mean, if we look at the households under 50,000, our analysis does show that on a prevalence basis, they're 25% more likely to shop online with Walmart versus supermarkets. But
Hmm.
again, when you think about that income group being extremely price sensitive, especially today, um, saving on a basket of 40 goods anywhere from 10 to 20% is a very strong motivation for why you may find shopping with Walmart online attractive.
So you're a grocery executive listening to this conversation, and you're not surprised that Walmart is a very strong competitor, both in terms of their brick and mortar, and now increasingly so online. What advice do you have for them?
Well, one advice is while it's important to remain competitive on a price perspective, let's just call a spade a spade. We're running with gaps that are again between 10 and 20%, whether it's in store or online right now. The point there would be there's not a lot you're going to be able to do as a retailer to lower those gaps against Walmart when they may be holding the line on price increases, taking a little bit of a hit on cost of goods or their margin because they're offsetting it with other ancillary or new streams of revenue. So the real takeaway is, you know, what other levers are we going to focus on pulling, right? Whether it's promotions or quality of the service or the products that we offer that can create some space between us and them.
Yeah,
If it's
yeah,
all
it's good
about
advice.
the packaged good products we get in the center store, those national brands, they're ubiquitous. They're available anywhere. So why would I pay any more for a national brand item if I'm shopping online? But, we have our private label products, we have our perishable products. And in perishables, we also have the fourth temp zone that's still very underdeveloped with hots, grab,
The
heat and
higher
eat.
margin products. Yeah.
Right. So we need to look at things that we can leverage from a position of strength that we don't compete as much on. We need to then communicate that value in a way that resonates with our core customers, which again tends to be more affluent, while recognizing we can only do so much to defend our lowest income households from the EDLP, who has an incredible price advantage over us, partly because of their scale. And I would say beyond that, part of it, and this is getting ahead of ourselves, is then really revisiting and rethinking our pricing philosophy online, and then entertaining pricing tactics that could reward behaviors that benefit us and the customer. That's just a kind of a long-winded answer
Awesome.
to your question, Mark.
Very good. Yeah, and there'll be more information forthcoming in that last area of discussion that you raised. So, David, how can the viewers get a hold of this special report?
Well, there's a couple ways. One, they could just send me an email at david.bishop@brickmeetsclick.com or submit an inquiry through our website, and we'll be happy to follow up with them. Or if you're looking to save a little bit of money and you're a retailer who engages in conversations with Mercatus, like yourself, Mark, then I would encourage you to reach directly out to Mark at Mercatus, and they'll be happy to share a complimentary copy with you.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Thank you very much, Mark. Have a good one.